make it or not. I mean, all I know is I make a living as an entertainer. This is my job, so in in a certain respect, that's success enough,
Right.
because I mean, I remember being younger, slaving away at my day jobs, thinking, "Oh man, God, it'd be great just if I could just make it, in music." Well, now I am, but that's a vicious grind too, and it's as rewarding as it can be. It's also scary, and it's also, you're on your own, and you're just continuously out there, always, looking at the calendar, going, "Oh shit, man, I got to fill this date or that date because I got these bills and that bill, and I gotta," and so it doesn't get any easier, and so I just continue to work at it, and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, let me see here. Let's take a look at the chat here real quick here, Pete. If the
Yeah,
music
I
sucks, the
haven't
tits
I
in the
haven't been
ass.
looking because I can't. It's hard to
It's
do both,
it is. It is.
especially
I
as
mean, because the chat can be distracting sometimes. Some of the shit these guys talk about. But yeah. Deb says if the music sucks, the TNA. Let's just say tits and ass might still sell the crap. Yeah, I would agree with that. Look at Britney. My left toe's got more talent than Britney Spears. Give me a break. But she's hot looking, and that's what sold her music.
yeah. Well,
Hey, anyway, guys in the chat, if anybody has any questions for Pete, just type it in the chat and we'll throw it up in there, and you'll definitely get an honest answer.
I
Pete
think,
doesn't
what, if I were
beat
to
around the
sum up
bush.
the way I feel, you know what? To me, I I'm in it for the long haul. I always have been, and I think longevity. I think longevity always prevails.
Hmm.
Because fads come and go,
Yep.
and flash in the pans, and we're talking about the majors. Always, we do tend to pick on those at the top, but unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff competing all around. On one side, you got, you have major bands really, sucking it all up for themselves because the money's there and you can't compete.
Right.
But then, unfortunately, what you also have, we do have an overpopulated glut of wannabes. I mean, you got like, when you turn around, you see your grandpa putting out a CD or something. To me, there's something. You know what I mean?
William Hung. That's a perfect example right there.
Exactly, and
And
it's
he
like,
got signed, but he was signed knowing he
well,
was going to be a flash in the pan.
so you're competing with so much on both sides, and there's like something like 500,000 CDs put out a year. I think. I mean, a half a million. It's just an insane amount, and unfortunately, the reality is that a CD is a product. That's
Hmm.
what in the distribution world it's called product.
Right.
Just like a bag of oranges or a bottle of shampoo, and it's looked at as a product. And when there's a lot of it, I mean, the same thing happens to the housing market or anything. I mean, why is a diamond valuable? Because they're rare. But if suddenly, diamonds, if you just walked outside and it was hailing diamonds, and everybody could just scoop them up and fill their garbage cans with them, well, they lose their value. And unfortunately, a lot of the struggle now is that's what's happening with music. There's too much of it. There's a lot of it, and that's the double-edged sword of the internet.
I was just
Um,
thinking that, yeah, and you're
but
right.
my like if you could play, are you gonna play some more songs off my new
Yeah,
album?
of course.
And, do you have stuff uh, lined up ready to go, or can I? Where I'm going with this is,
Pick one.
if there's one song on the album that just summed up my attitude, it would be "Won't Give It Up," because that song is really what I'm all about. It's just basically you just can't quit,
Right.
and that to me is the essence of that's the rock and roll Because, you know, rock and roll, to me, it's not a game. It's not a hobby. It's like, you know, and it's not just about getting laid or getting fucked up or being a rock and roll star. To me, rock and roll it's a work ethic. It's like, you know, last man standing wins, and it's like, you know, if you're, I always felt like the true artists were the ones that, you know, you'd have to kill them. You know, they'd be doing it regardless. It's right. Not. It's not. There's no motive. No motive.
No underlying.
Other than this is who I am, and I have no choice. I mean, I really do. I am who I am, and I do what I do because I really don't have any other choice. I remember ever since I was a little boy,
right.
Not much older than a baby, looking at the world around me, saying, I don't want to conform. You know, my dad would take me downtown to his office, and he'd bring me to work sometimes on the train, and he'd bring me down there to his stuffed envelopes or just hang out the office and help him, you know. And I remember seeing all the guys, all the men wearing the same suits, carrying the same briefcase, and they all looked the same to me. And I remember being 6 or 7 going, man, I'm not going to be like that. I don't want to be like that. And see, at that moment in time, I think I officially embraced the rock and roll spirit of not conforming. You know, to me, that's what it is. Right. And you do it whether, you know, it's, I think you have too many now. You have too many, you know, kids and wannabes out there putting out their CDs, going for that instant fame. And I know some people like that. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know some people like that who they're just like, you know, they're coming out with their first CD or something, and they're looking for that instant success that's going to save them, you know, paying any amount of dues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you know, and people come to me for advice sometimes, and they don't like what I tell them. They don't want to hear what I tell them. You know, people ask me, well, how did you get that done, or how did you have that success over there? And I'll say, well, it started 30 years ago.
The truth hurts.
And they'll be like, well, what do you mean? I'll say, well, are you willing to put in like about 30, maybe 40 years of busting your ass? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, what do you mean? You know, of course, that may be just my story. You know, not everybody it takes that long, but I think if you could do anything decade after decade and still be doing, it's easy. You know, we're in a disposable society. Americans is a disposable society. You use up something, you throw it away. You know, the average person changes careers many times. You know, and rightfully so. If you're not happy with what you're doing, you should change your career, you know. But if you're doing what you really love and what you were meant to do, you don't stop doing it just because it's not paying enough, or because, you know, your family or your spouse or somebody says, well, you know, you should grow up and be realistic.
Get a real job, yeah.
You know, I'm reading. I love to read. I just finished a book, Larry Harmon. And good trivia question, but Larry Harmon was the original Bozo. He's the one that started the Bozo the Clown character. And, you know, many different men have played Bozo throughout the years, but he was the original Bozo, and his story is amazing. This guy, from a young kid all through his life, he was just driven, and he would try so many different things. He'd never take no for an answer, and he would tell people, you know, I want to be an entertainer, and he had the gift, you know, and he was a drummer, a musician, and he'd get up on stage, and, you know, he'd win all these talent contests, and but people were constantly telling him, oh, be realistic, be a doctor, you know, entertainers don't make money, you know, and you know, you think it's bad now. Back in those old days, oh my God, you know, that was a kiss of death if you told your family you wanted to be an actor or a singer. They thought you were just a bum, you know. Oh, no, that's, be realistic, you know. But he didn't listen, and he went on to great success as an actor. He he launched the Bozo the Clown character, you know, and he